Hello, my name is Diana Connelly. I'm a co-founder of Photonic Therapy Institute and your host for this Independence from Pain Summit. My guest this session is Director of Photonic Therapy Institute, Kay Aubrey-Chimene. Kay is an internationally known bionutritional consultant and light therapy educator who founded and directs Photonic Therapy Institute. She hosts weekly webinars called Office Hours for students and the public on best practices for attaining maximum results from any light therapy tool. Her revolutionary courses on photopuncture and light therapy combine the accuracy of acupuncture with the healing power of light and are recognized for a national certification by the Board of Advanced Natural Health Sciences. Kay and I started working together in 2014 when I took her equine photopuncture class and quickly discovered our shared passion for all living beings with light. So welcome, Kay.
Thanks, Diana. Thanks for taking over hosting.
Yes, you're welcome. So you've got a session for us today on photopuncture.
I do. Photopuncture has become my term from an old paper that I found when I first started doing this about 25 years ago. I started trying to find any information that was out there, and I found an obscure research paper that used the term photopuncture, and that just stuck. It just really resonated for me. So there's other terms, but photonic acupuncture, that seems to be the one. Laser acupuncture, many people used. For me, it's been photopuncture. They're all the same thing. Sure.
Cool. I think we should maybe get right into it. I know that I use photopuncture and it's changed my life. It's great to be able to have, especially because, as you guys will see as she gets into her session, the tools that are used for photopuncture are easy to carry with you. So that's one of the reasons why photopuncture has changed my life. I can take it to the dog park. I can take it in my purse. I can take it on a run.
And we didn't used to have that, did we? The original machines we had were heavy and bulky and
expensive,
ridiculously expensive. And so it's exciting that now they just go with us in our pocket.
Mm-hmm.
In my case, my saddlebags, my dog bag, any of it, there's always a torch in there. Yeah, I got started with this in the mid-1990s. My heart horse, I had gotten back into writing. I was not very healthy. I had a lot of problems, but I had a friend get me back into writing, and my heart horse got hurt. We were at a race, and he managed to tear both front suspensory ligaments. And the veteran, totally torn, completely ripped in half. And the vets at the race said, "He's hamburger, put him down. You'll never ride him again. He'll always be in pain. You can't come back from this." And I was just bereft. This boy had brought me back from being very, very sick, and we were very bonded. So I got him home, and my vet came out to see him the following week, and she did ultrasounds on him and found that he was in bad shape. She says, I never say never, and I've been reading about these new light therapy boots, and we should try them. And we did. And sure enough, within 6 months, he was back to better than he'd been before. We'd broken down all the scar tissue that it turned out he had. We'd completely repaired those tendons. And he's now a 38-year-old, perfectly healthy, sound, happy pasture pony. And that was really my introduction to the power of using light. And so not long after that, I got introduced to the company that made the wraps. Made these big machines where you could scan your horse or scan your own body, and it would beep. And they just said, put the light where it beeps. They didn't really explain it very well. But what was happening, what we found out as we learned more, what was happening is that the machine could tell when there was an electrical difference between one set of cells and another. It was just like a little comb, and you combed the body, and it would go beep. Well, why did the same points go beep over and over and over again? On me, on the horse, on my friends, the same points would beep. Well, it turned out those were acupuncture points. So this is 25 years ago, and we're getting out back in those days, there were no books for acupoints on horses or dogs that you could get. you got the big book of Chinese acupoints. It was mostly in Chinese, and you started trying to figure out what they were. But it was really great for me to have to go through that process, because I started learning the correlation between what the points were on the dogs and the horses and me and the cats that came by. And that was really my introduction. And I went through it the hard way. I had to learn by scanning and treating and activating points on thousands of animals and people and friends. And then over the years, I came to learn from other people that were going through a lot of the same things. From I was informed by McLaren's work and Photonic Health, and I went and started learning acupressure through Tallgrass, all these other places, and it came together as our photopuncture approach. Mm-hmm. And the beautiful thing is, we know it works for very simply, very straightforwardly, for many, many different issues, helping to balance the body. So I've got a presentation here on photopuncture and how it is the same as light therapy, and how it's a form of light therapy, but it's not what we're traditionally talking about when people talk about standing in front of a panel or using a pad or using a bulb. Those aren't really as targeted of light, and there's advantages to targeting. So I thought I'd take you through that.
All right, cool. Well, let's go.
So the overall word for healing the body with light these days is now photobiomodulation. After years of the scientists primarily used lasers, and then they started figuring out you could do it with LEDs, and there were benefits to both. They got together in, I guess, 2017, and they decided to come up with a term that encompassed modulating, not suppressing, not activating, but modulating the biological processes of the body with photons. So photobiomodulation, which is so much, it's kind of a big word, but it's much more accurate than just saying laser therapy or photonic therapy or red light therapy, all of which, low-level laser therapy, all of those terms have been used. But it's really just using very specific wavelengths of light that have been shown to be absorbed by the body that trigger certain biological processes. And the simple way to say it is they reduce pain and inflammation, increase circulation, and stimulate cellular repair. Now that's the big over-encompassing photobiomodulation.
Which covers a lot in the health and wellness of an animal or a person.
It really does. It really does. And unlike other energy forms, pulsed electromagnetic rings, Reiki, anything that's an energetic medicine, PBM, photobiomodulation, it doesn't create heat. It's not doing surgery. It is triggering a host of cellular reactions.
Kind of like when you take a house plant that's not doing well, and you set it in the sun, and it starts to perk up over time.
Exactly. Instead of photosynthesis, we're getting photobiomodulation. It's just the term for it on living tissue in mammals, or living animals, doesn't have to be a mammal, as opposed to a plant. Okay. So there are new types of light therapy in addition that are coming out, just so that we just define them a little bit. What is photodynamic therapy? And we don't really cover that in this summit, but this is really growing quickly. This is where they inject or ingest, somebody eats or drinks an agent that's reactive to light. Maybe they inject it straight into a cancerous tumor, or they inject it into something else in the body, and then they shine light on the body and it reacts with that chemical. They're using that for cancer. They're using it for all sorts of different health issues now. Mm-hmm. And so we're not getting into that here. I just wanted to define it. Another new exciting area is photoanesthesia. And that's where lasers really shine, pun intended, because you can so finely target that laser that they can activate just a specific nerve, and they can deaden that nerve long enough for surgery. Okay, so that's really, think about what we could do for opiates and so on by deadening nerves. Very, very high intensive, very focused. So that's where lasers really are better than anything else. But my passion is photopuncture. All right. This is the targeted application of red light. You can do it with infrared, but it's not as effective. Red light on acupoints, and that stimulates a response from the body, just like acupuncture does. And this is the 3-year-old granddaughter of one of our practitioners, and she now knows to reach for her torch when she has a boo-boo. And she was putting it specifically on a point that helped with digestion. Her tummy didn't feel good. So this is Ella using photopuncture.
That's so cool that even kids can use it in the home.
And it's so safe. Exactly. We're using LED red light. You could, even if they shine it in their eyes, they're not going to hurt anything. Okay. And if anything, if they use it too long, the body will just stop absorbing photons. It's not going to damage anybody.
Right.
Okay. So acupuncture, acupressure, photopuncture, all of these are ways to stimulate a pulse of energy through the body, okay? So with a needle, it's causing a microabrasion that sends a pulse along a meridian pathway, and we're gonna get a little bit more into meridians, just a little. Acupressure does it by putting a physical energy, it's pressure on it, which sends a stimulus to the brain that says, over here, pay attention over here. It's a little slower, but it does work. Light sends photons through the meridian, making it very fast, very safe. It's non-invasive. There's no needle. And a lot of acupuncturists, master acupuncturists, are now moving to using light as opposed to needles. Partially is the cost. Those needles are very expensive. They're single use. They have to be destroyed. You can't even autoclave them and reuse them. So they're starting to use light, and they're finding that it's even faster. It's very, very effective. So we call this photopuncture, or I do. So just a reminder, the difference between light therapy and photopuncture. Here on the left, we have somebody who's having a pad with LED lights on her lower back. We would prefer that it be directly against the skin. This was for taking pictures. They still had her have a shirt on. It would still work through the very light white cloth. So that's putting light on an area for a length of time, in this case, like 20, 30 minutes, to saturate with photons. That'll help lower pain, increase circulation, stimulate cellular repair, okay? But photopuncture is when we target that light directly to an acupuncture point, and it affects the entire body. So this point on the elbow is very powerful for stimulating digestion and peristalsis. It's helpful for all sorts of allergy issues. So it's affecting the whole body, especially when put into a recipe of points that are used in combination.
So Kay, when you were talking about your heart horse earlier, and you were talking about the suspensory ligaments, you had used wraps for that, because that's all you knew and had at the time, right?
That's all I knew it had at the time. Now when we have something like that, because now we have a rehab center where that's what we do, is work with horses that have all sorts of issues. We use a combination. We use the light therapy on the in this case, the suspensory ligaments in the front legs. We would use the light therapy over that, and then we would use the photopuncture to help with realigning the body, to help with bringing up the immune response, to help with bringing pain down across the body. So we would use them in conjunction with each other. They're very complementary to each other. But if all I had was a torch, I could also use that torch. The ones I use are very high intensity. I could use that along that ligament for a few minutes and just hold it there. And it would work very much like the pads would be. It'd just be less convenient. Mm-hmm. Okay. Good question. Thanks. So here's a couple of pictures of how meridians flow energy through the body. All right. And the meridians have been mapped out for thousands of years. The Asians started doing it, and acupuncture was really considered to be pretty woo-woo, that it didn't work. But by the 1950s, 60s, 70s, it started becoming more mainstream. By the 80s and 90s, now we started having the research papers that were out on and the body of evidence that showed how it worked and why it worked. And now we actually, with the advent of better and better imaging, we now can see the pathways. Just like we can see the veins, we can see the nerves, now we can see the meridians. And I'll show you that in a minute. But when you use red light or pulsed red light, it can reestablish the healthy energy flow along these meridians very, very quickly, all right? These are just communication pathways. Just like we have telephone lines and we used to have telegraph lines, and we have radio waves, they're different communication pathways. Well, we have 3 different pathways in the body. We have the nerves, we have the blood vessels, and we have the meridians. And it turns out that light travels through the meridians just like it does fiber optic cable. So around corners, you know, the meridians take that light and they pulse it through the body in seconds. You could be putting light on a point on your big toe, and it's going to light up information in the brain. It's going to help give that information signal and send that 911 over to the brain in milliseconds, actually. Okay. And back in the 1990s, some of the very first research that was ever done on lasers and medical lasers and how light helped the body was done in Novosibirsk, Russia. There's a very famous lab there. And one of the research things that they were doing, they had the research subjects, this person behind a screen, and the screen was so incredibly sensitive, it could tell exactly when a specific point on the body would have more energy, would light up. And in doing that, for some reason, they lit up, for example, on the shoulder, they lit up a lung 1, a point on the shoulder. And the screen showed that there was energy coming out on lung 11 at the end of the thumb, which just proved out that. What's that?
Whole meridian line. It saw it all.
No, I don't think they saw, because it goes deep again. They saw where it came back to the surface.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Not the meridian itself is a little deeper, but the acupoints themselves are where those meridians come up close to the skin. And that's where they saw it. And they could start mapping out and proving those maps that the Chinese had done 1,000 years ago were actually very correct.
That's so cool that we can see that now.
So these acupoints that have been mapped out can be done by laser or LED with light. Very, you know, it has to be a very dark room and they have a screen that's very, 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 very sensitive, but they have done it.
That's so cool.
Okay. So so that's where the light enters the body. And it seems that it doesn't work. If you took a pad, because I get this question a lot, well, I could just put a pad all the way down the spine and I would light up all those points at once, right? And I'd get all that acupuncture. The brain is smarter than that.
Oh.
It would see that as a generalized lighting of the entire area. That's why we don't just walk in the sun and get a photopuncture treatment. The targeted application of that light gives more information to the brain about exactly what it's supposed to do with that information.
Well, and I think you've likened it to putting a program into a computer or using your keyboard even to write a word. You are specifically pushing certain keys,
right,
to create what you want, what your intention is.
Right.
So,
You don't mash all those keys at once, because then the information gets lost.
Right.
Right. You don't take a crayon on a coloring book and color the whole page. You color the specific things that should be in that color.
Yeah, very targeted.
So recently, they've been able to go in and actually identify these ducts. Now, I call it a meridian. They're calling it ducts and corpuscles, because, of course, they have to have the scientific term for it, not the Chinese term for it. And I've seen this written as Bonghan and Bongum. So I've updated it to match what came out of the most recent paper that I found that actually had pictures. This was out of a rat, where they went in and they dyed. They used a fluorescent dye so they could identify the different structures. And they started looking, and these are what they looked like.
So this is the abdomen of a rat.
That's correct.
And so the exit, so let me look at this a little bit. Corpuscle and duct, that arrow's pointing there, and then the edge of the open skin and the exit of the superficial duct. So
Right.
the entry point is where we see that tool.
I believe that the entry point is where we see that tool, that larger corpuscle. That is correct. That the acupoint is the bungum corpuscle, all right? And the duct is what carries that through the body.
That's cool.
Okay. So you can do, there's no great secrets, all right? You can do photopuncture with any good acupressure guide or with specific protocols. And of course, the better the protocols are, the better the results. But even if you just know a little bit to get started, you're going to get some benefit, okay? So we provide different recipes. We also have a starter kit that comes with one of the better acupressure point guides, plus some of our charts. This is just the kind of thing that you can use. You can get any different acupressure guide, or you can even Google acupressure for allergies, right? You can look up and then just use red light, targeted red light, to do photopuncture.
You know, I was going to say that before we had charts and before there was before I had a lot of books, I remember I was getting symptoms of pink eye. I woke up and my eyes matted shut and it hurt to look left and right. And I thought, you know, what am I going to do? I have light therapy and I have photopuncture. I can hopefully try that first. And I Googled acupuncture points for pink eye and I went to images. And I just, okay, that looks like it's a good one, you know, and there were a few different ones, but oftentimes they're the same points. And by the end of the day, I was fine. So it worked. Whatever was on Google worked.
And what if you had lit up 9 points, but you only needed 3 of them? There was no downside to lighting up all those points for just a few seconds each. And we'll talk about how long it takes.
Cool.
Here's it. We're now starting to work with a lot of dentists, and they're using acupoints to help with different conditions that are considered, you know, oral and dental conditions. Here's one for TMD or TMJ issues. Okay, and that lowers the spasms and releases the neck, and helps to lower pain very quickly. They can also use trigger points, but this is the same idea. And you know, good torches, there are torches now that have fiber optic probes, so you can be doing points inside the mouth, up the sinuses, in the ears. But this is just you could even just use that point. If you were really good at your acupuncture points, you could put that fiber optic probe directly on the points. Or you can just do it with the light just right out of the lens. Okay. Now this happened to have a blue one. We don't use blue for acupoints. It was just a picture that I grabbed.
Right, because you said red is what activates acupuncture.
Right, for photopuncture, really all you need is the red. The red penetrates to the right level to hit those corpuscles or hit those acupoints. Infrared will work, but you lose most of it. It passes right through because it penetrates so much more deeply. Blue doesn't really penetrate deeply enough to activate acupoints. So thinking about in terms of activation time. Now this is with the torches I use. If you have torches by other companies, Alight, Photonic Health, whatever, if you're using those, use the activation times that they recommend. That's all. But just to give you an idea, with those torches set on high, 5 to 30 seconds is all it takes per point. And it might only take 5 seconds, but let's say you remembered 30. You're not going to hurt anything by going 30 seconds. Okay. And you can, so here's, for example, a picture of the lung meridian. Remember I talked about they lit up the point on his chest and his thumb lit up. So these are the points that go along the inner arm that correspond to the lung meridian, which right now, considering how many of us are a little concerned about lung and respiratory, these are important points to know and use. We don't use all of them. There's a few that are the most important along this meridian, but we could activate a single point, or we can use 2 torches to maybe light the first point and the point on the thumb at the same time and open that whole meridian, unblock energy along that whole meridian. So it's just something that we do within, you know, the more, as you start learning more and more about photopuncture, you get even faster and faster. and have a wider range of things that you can do. You can use it for opening joints, for muscle knots, for neuropathy, for arthritis, for mental clarity, for all sorts of different things.
Helping with detox even, yeah.
Right, exactly. So when do we use what? So light therapy, if I have wounds, broken bones, I want to flood the area with photons, okay? Whether red, infrared, blue, I want to flood the area. I like long, low, and slow. I happen to be a pad person for this, but you can do it with panels, you can do it with lamps, you can do it with whatever tool you have, you can do it with that torch, okay? Broken bones, muscle stiffness, arthritis, ring bone, which on humans is osteoarthritis, athletic warm up, any pain in a specific area, where do we start? We put the light on the pain. And of course, traumatic brain injury or other brain issues. That's when we want to really do long, low, slow, flood the body with light. Okay.
Can you talk a little bit more about long, low, and slow?
Thanks. Well, as humans, we tend to have the idea that more is better and faster is better. But I kind of look at it as if you put too much light too fast.
Mm-hmm.
All right, think of putting your body under the broiler. Okay, that heat all stays up. It gets hot, stays at the top, and it doesn't necessarily get the same response that you want. But
right.
if you put your body into the crock pot, into the slow cooker,
Mm-hmm.
and you let it just slow, soften, and you get a very different response, right? Now, maybe cooking isn't the best analogy, but light therapy has also been called low-level light therapy or low-level laser therapy. And this is what came about when they went from high-powered lasers that cut through the tissue and cauterized it. That was the original use for lasers medically. And it's still the biggest use for lasers medically. Surgery, right? We get a very clean cut and it cauterizes as we go, boom. That's more of the broiler effect.
Right.
Okay? And then we have, they started back in the late 60s, they started looking at, well, you know what, those animals that we did that we did surgery on with a laser instead of with a scalpel, they healed better.
Mm.
What would happen if we went really slow with this light? And that's when they found out that, low level light actually heals the tissue better and faster. And so there's been 50 years in there while we've been figuring out what's the right amount of low level.
Or the dose.
Or the dose, right. And it's not just how much light, it's how much light per second. So if I know that a proper dose is maybe, it depends on what we're doing, but let's say a dose was going to be 30 joules of light in a specific area, okay? I could put that 30 joules out in a laser in about 15 seconds and burn things, or I could put that 30 joules out in an LED diode over 20 minutes.
Right.
Okay, and let the body have time to absorb it and pass the extra photons on to the tissue below it. So continue to cascade those benefits. So long, low, and slow, in my opinion, is when it's slow enough for the body to absorb it and then continue to pass the extra photons, the extra cellular respiration, the extra enzymatic benefits on to all the neighboring tissue, okay? As opposed to it just getting hot and having too much.
You get that with the pads, the long, low, and slow.
We do, and to some extent panels and bulbs. But what we're seeing in the market right now is new devices coming out every week. I mean, every time. And how are they being sold? Mine is bigger, faster, better, more light, right? And a lot of it is a lie. They're not accurately measured, but also a lot of it is not the correct approach. I'd rather have a lower intensity for a longer time in a lot of situations, especially when we're regenerating deeper tissue. We're trying to get down. We know that red light will penetrate not quite an inch, okay? And infrared light will penetrate maybe down to 4 inches or 100 centimeters initially. And then when that's saturated, it'll start going deeper and deeper and deeper and deeper. But if we try to do it all within just a few seconds or just a few minutes, right? If you stand in front of a panel and it says stand 6 inches away for 10 minutes, okay? Well, there's going to be those people who want to stand 2 inches away for 5 minutes or 10 minutes and get too much light. Or there's going to just be the person who decides to make a panel that's 3 times as much light. So now you only have to stand there for 2 minutes. You don't get the same response by the body.
Cool. Yeah, thank you for going into that with us a bit.
No, that's good. Now, photopuncture is a very different tool, all right? We're talking 5 to 15 to 30 seconds per point. We're not going to be causing heat. We're not causing saturation. We're causing a pulse of energy to tell the brain what to do. Like you said, that recipe, right? That computer program.
Right.
And it's particularly good for helping to bring ligaments and tendons back into equal tension so that we get structural imbalances. We can release emotional issues. Now you can do that with light therapy too, lighting up the temporal lobe. But there have been shown to be, there are recipes out there for helping to release emotional issues. Stimulating stimulating muscles to grow after they've atrophied. Getting better performance enhancement. It's really big for that. You could do it with, you could also do it with other light. There's different types of enhancement here. Health tune-ups, chronic health challenges, immune balance. I love it for allergies.
Yeah.
Fast pain relief, letting a muscle unspasm very, very quickly. Fast allergy relief, fast headache relief. It's working in a very different approach than the long, low, and slow. Okay. And I want to give you, this is something that's just in the last month has come in from one of our new clients. She's given us permission to use this. And Rosa came to us through Facebook. She'd gotten, I'll let people just read this on the screen, but Rosa is a woman in her 30s, I think, who is very active. She has a syndrome called Ehlers-Danlos, which I guess is pretty rare. But this is where most of us have met people where their joints are overly lax, like they can they're double jointed almost and everything. Their ligaments and tendons don't hold the joints in place. So their hips pop out, or they can over rotate too much, and so they can get very painful. And by the time they're in their 30s and 40s, they're constantly in a sympathetic nervous state. In other words, they can't sleep very well because they're always worried that they're going to fall down or something's going to happen. They got to be very, very careful when they walk, when they do anything. And exercise becomes very difficult. They end up wearing wraps and things to support their joints and their hips and their lower backs. And I can't even imagine. Okay. So it turns out we have 3 different people that I've met in the last few months that have this. And Rosa was one of the first. She had started off, she'd met about light therapy. She was in one of the groups and she got herself a panel. And she and I met when she came back to report that she was having a lot of problems using this panel because it made her very sick. Well, that made a lot of sense to me because when you light up the whole body at once, like you said in your session, the body tries to detox. All the cells now have the energy to get rid of the extra waste in their body. It all gets dumped into the lymph system and you go into a healing crisis, okay? Also called a Herx reaction. And when you're using non-targeted light therapy and you don't open up the lymph system first, you can get really sick. So what did she do? She tried to help give her body energy, good for her, with a panel, and she was getting very sick from it. So I suggested maybe she try targeted light therapy to support her joints that were in a lot of pain. And then we started helping her to sleep. So because these people are always in sympathetic, fight or flight, as opposed to rest and digest, they don't heal well from chronic issues, and they don't sleep.
Sleep is so important.
So she started activating photopuncture points to help her to sleep. To help her to go into parasympathetic. And in her very first night, she got a good night's sleep. And so did her husband for the first time in ages. All right. So she started reporting back to us how well that was going. And then she started just doing the standard recipe of health and balance points that we give out with our torches, because this is really all, the major points that are going to bring up your immune system and help with your mental clarity and help with your body pain, just general health and wellness, health and balance of your body. She started doing those as well as the parasympathetic points to help her sleep.
Mm-hmm.
She stopped all her painkillers. Now, this was just within a couple of weeks, all right? And she started working out again, which shortly after that, she said she started working out without her knee joint supports, which I was like, are you sure? She's like, yeah, I'm doing okay. So then June 20th, she said she was able to bike 30 miles without dismounting for the uphills. I can't bike 30 miles.
I don't think I've ever tried.
And yeah, back when I was her age, I might have been able to, but I wasn't facing anything like this. And she used the peak performance charts for warming up beforehand and cooling down afterwards and doing the muscle recovery. But she said that if she had not, back in the days when she was trying to bicycle and she didn't do these recoveries, just even going and doing a few miles, she would be sick and tired and sore for days. And she was able to do 30 miles.
And I think we all understand when we're passionate about something, and it seems like she's probably passionate about bicycling, that just tears you apart inside to not be able to do what you want to do. So this awesome self-care routine that she was doing, it's incredible.
Well, then what happens? Okay. The next day she falls off her bike.
Right.
Okay. So she says, I left on my left hip on concrete. Okay. I got home, put ice on it. I don't think my SI joint or my hip have dislocated. With EDS, that would normally have happened. It would have dislocated. Okay. So she was going to use the small panel, because by this time she'd also bought a small panel. Instead of trying to light up her whole body, she was doing a small panel to give herself she has a panel instead of pads for giving herself the nutrient of photons every day. Okay. Yeah. But she asked, what do you do with the torches to recover from this? So I said, first, light your forehead. This is where the fear and the memory of that fall is contained. So let's let go of the fear, which she did. And then use those same charts, the same recovery chart that she was doing after she was riding her bicycle for 30 miles. Okay. That's all I had her do. 48 hours later, she was completely out of pain. Wow. You wouldn't think that if you saw the swelling and the black bruise, the size of my husband's whole hand on my hip, but yep, no pain anymore. Wow. 2 days. We all fall. Whether we have Ehlers-Danlos or not, we all fall. We all get hurt. We all get kicked by a horse, or, something happens. When you have that light there to get right on it, and good for her, she did ice as well. I'm a big fan of ice, and then lights, and then ice, and then lights. Mm-hmm. But that's the difference. She recovered, and she's back out riding her bicycle again.
No matter how many times I hear stories like this, or stories that are my own, every time it's like, wow, I just can't, that's incredible.
Yeah, exactly. And this is why I had to share this. This has all just come in the last couple of weeks. Yeah. So I have 15 years of these coming in, but I just get excited, and I've never had somebody send me 4, 5, 6, 7 testimonials in 1 month, all just building on the last one. So it was really neat.
Good for her.
So that's the kind of thing we can do with photopuncture, right? You can get started with any basic red light torch that has, a good amount of output, and then work up. If you want more light in your life or want to do different things, then you can work up from there. But it's a good, I can remember the days when it was $7,000 for us to get started. You invested in the $7,000 system. And now, for a professional set is under $1,000. A starter piece is a few $100s for a good one. Mm-hmm. And even if what you find is less than that, start with it. See if it works for you. It's where you shine your light is as important as the light you shine.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, you know, if somebody watching this is interested, we have classes, we have charts, we have groups that help with it. So we want people to really get empowered with this.
Yeah, it's nice that, you know, like you said, 20 years ago, or even for me, 5, 6 years ago, a lot of this, the educational aspect of it was not available. So,
Exactly. Exactly. That's why we wanted Photonic Therapy Institute, was to start having a repository of education and talks and educators from around the world, not just us, but try to give a more of a community for people who needed better information about light.
mm-hmm.
And, you know, I can't stress it. I can't stress it too much. I always have at least one torch with me, usually two, because I can't tell you how often I've ended up giving it to the person who's sitting next to me who's in pain. But, you know, if I'm sitting here and I'm nervous about talking to someone, I can lower my blood pressure. I can relax myself. If I did this yesterday, I was trying to leave the office, wasn't paying attention, rammed my knee directly into a table,
Yep.
grabbed my torch, lit it up. Yesterday morning, I managed to catch my finger. And I was letting the dogs out. It wasn't daylight yet, and I caught my finger at the door.
Ugh.
And I couldn't see it. I just knew that my finger really, really, really hurt. I had a torch by my bed. I laid back down in bed, put the torch on, went to sleep. Well, I got up in the morning and I'd lost a good half-inch flap of skin.
Oh.
But it was already, there was no bleeding. It was already healing up. The skin, it was ready for me to cut that flap off, and it's fine. I didn't even think about it again after I treated it.
I also keep a torch on my nightstand. And well, I have a dog too, and you never know in the middle of the night. I mean,
Yeah.
I've tell her to go outside, and I'll take my light with me, and I know the acupuncture points well enough to put them on her. And I mean, it's happened a few times, but I remember the very first time, right away she vomited right away instead of trying to continue to work it out of her. And then she had diarrhea 2 or 3 times afterward, just one right after the other.
Cleaned it out.
And she came inside wanting food. Like, okay,
I'm done.
for now.
Yep.
I also keep mine on my nightstand. I take it to bed, a glass of water and a torch. Just, you never know.
It's an aspect of light. I mean, I've really become passionate about all aspects of light. I'm learning more about panels. I'm helping people. One woman who's from southern Mexico, who's helping people who literally have no money. Like, and of course, diabetic ulcers and problems healing from wounds are just rampant. And so she's using, you know, a heat lamp type thing that has infrared in it. Well, if that's what she has and we can help her get the best benefits from it, helping her to target correctly, great.
Yeah.
All right. Invest in what you can afford, and even more, invest in learning how to get the best results from whatever device. Because manufacturers, there's good ones out there. There's ones that are FDA approved. There's ones that get independent. You know, you want to have independent lab results on these panels. Because the panels are the fastest growing aspect of light therapy, I think the panels and torches are the ones that are most ripe for knockoffs and junk that really they're lying to you on what's coming out and how long they'll last. And if it's made out of plastic, it's going to deteriorate, especially in a torch. So, you know the company you're working with. Check them out. Do they have good reviews? Do they have a good return process? Do they have education that comes with their products?
And watch, right? Isn't there a session devoted to?
I'm sorry, say that again.
Isn't there a session in the summit kind of devoted to all of that, Mr. Liner?
There's a session on all the different types. Yes, Michael Liner is doing a session on all the different types of light therapy that's out there, from panels and immersion beds to torches and lasers and so getting a little more information about the pros and cons of each kind. Cheapest is not always best, but neither is most expensive. Many of us don't, I got told that Tony Robbins has 2 immersion beds. But most of us can't afford $225,000 beds in our house. It's just probably not going to happen. Then again, I met a veterinarian 2 years ago at Walt, whose son came down with juvenile arthritis. And the way the doctors wanted to treat it is they wanted to go in and use chemotherapy and radiation to nuke his bone marrow for 2 years. They wanted to kill all of his immune response. Of course, he'd have to live in a bubble for 2 years.
Wow.
And then hopefully this kills whatever is causing the arthritis. And they would quit doing it. Well, Daddy was a veterinarian, and Daddy said, no, that's not what you're going to do to my body, my son's body. And he started looking at light therapy, and he ended up investing in a bed for his child to lie in. And he started a clinic, I believe in Dallas. So he bought a $125,000 bed and then built a business around it to help pay for it so that his son could get his light. But within a year, his son was completely recovered from juvenile arthritis.
Oh. Well, that's kind of a good segue into, you've been doing this light stuff for 20, 25 years. Where do you see it going now, especially nitric oxide and knowing the sciences and all that we know? What do you see for the future?
Well, I see other countries, where other countries have gone, for example, Brazil, Australia, countries that are not quite as much in the grip of big pharma, where if you went to a dentist in Brazil, according to Dr. Epstein, that dentist is going to have laser therapy in his office. Here in the States, not so much. Probably an oral surgeon will, okay? Or someone like Dr. Epstein who deals with cancer of the mouth, but not so much the general practitioner, okay? If you go to a regular physician or even a surgeon, or I spoke to someone the other day who's getting cancer therapy at Duke, and they've absolutely forbidden her to do anything with light.
Wow.
Because we don't know, it might grow the cancer. And she's like, well, let me send you all of these papers. I'm like, no, we know better. Well, that's not always the thing, but they just have not, it hasn't reached them yet, right? Mm-hmm. If it's not a drug solution, they didn't want to talk to her about it. So it's one of those things that I think one of the places it's going is sessions like this are going to make it more mainstream.
We hope
customer
so.
demand, yeah. Customer demand drives what happens. Years ago, you couldn't go to a veterinarian and ask for acupuncture. Now, most big clinics, they're sending at least one person out to get certified in it. And we're showing them how they can do that with photopuncture even quicker with less downtime. So that's one thing that's going to be seen. We're going to see it more widespread with practitioners. I think we're going to see more and more massage therapists, physical therapists, therapists in general that are not maybe with a physician or a veterinarian, or they're out on their own. We're going to see more and more light therapists and photopuncture therapists available to the public. And of course, the next big thing is more and more and more of the public becoming empowered.
Yeah.
Which we've talked about in almost every one of these sessions, is the self-empowerment is the next big thing.
Wow. I see it too in sports performance and muscle recovery and that sort of thing. Mm-hmm.
As far back as 2001, what was his name? I think it was Jason Giambi, who won the best MVP for the baseball World Series. Mm-hmm. Something like 6-7 weeks before the World Series, he completely ripped his rotator cuff. And the team knew about the woman who was one of the first people to put together these red light therapy pads, same pads as I used for that horse of mine back in the mid-90s. And they flew her out, and she started lighting up his shoulder. And, history, he went on to win MVP. He rehabilitated that shoulder fast enough that he was able to play in the World Series after, you know, a really bad rotator cuff. I believe it was Jason. There were two Giambis, and I think it was him. But that was, you know, that was the very beginning of it really ending up. It started in sports. It started in the Olympic teams for the horses. Because of course, light therapy started in the veterinary world first, right? Let the animals get hurt. Let them, you know, let them do the testing on the animals. Well, as the trainers and the riders started seeing the benefits to their animals, then they said, well, I'm going to use it on me. I hurt, right? And that gave them an edge. And as they started winning and they started having more of an edge, other teams heard about it. And then it went from horses to other teams within the Olympics to other kinds of sports. And now it's mainstream. Now, I doubt that there's an Olympic sport out there that doesn't have team doctors using photobiomodulation in some form. Because they're going to recover so much faster, and they're going to have better performance up front.
And in the same light of what do we see for the future with this brain health, for sure? I mean, I know we've got some sessions on it, but
brain health is exploding. Yeah, the research that's coming out. Dr. Hamlin has an 1.5-inch thick book all about those research studies for brain health. I think it's photobiomodulation for the brain. So if you're interested in that, you can go look that up. It's an expensive read, but it's really worth it. It's fascinating.
There's so many niches. I mean, the future of light therapy can go so many places. It's great.
That's right. And there's no, that's one of the reasons why research on it is exploding. There's no there's no bad side effects. It doesn't take years and, you know, seeing what the death rate is from some things before you can approve a drug. There's no negative side effects.
And I jokingly say that I'm addicted to light, but I am not physically addicted to light. You know, no addiction.
Exactly. I'm addicted to not being in pain.
Right.
Being able to, you know, be in my 60s and be able to do whatever I want. So,
cool.
So, you know, we could go on and do hours and hours and hours of case studies, but I just really wanted to, here's one person, and it shows what's changed for her: being able to sleep, being able to exercise, being able to go get back into her life, being able to keep up with a child, okay, with a debilitating disease.
Yeah.
So
special.
All right. So thank you for interviewing me, and
so that's a wrap then for you for today. That's great.
It is.
Cool. And people can find you online, and they can find you, Google you, and you'll pop up. I know that.
I will. Yeah. Photonic Therapy Institute, and you now as well.
Yeah. Cool. Right. Well, thanks everyone for joining us for this session. And thank you, Kay, for all the other interviews that you've done and all the other sessions. And we'll talk to you next time.
Thank you. Bye.